Hello, below there. When he heard a voice thus calling to him, he was standing at the door of his box, with a flag in his hand, furled round its short pole. One would have thought, considering the nature of the ground, that he could not have doubted from what quarter the voice came. But instead of looking up to where I stood on the top of the steep cutting nearly over his head, he turned himself about and looked down the line. There was something remarkable in his manner of doing so, though I could not have said for my life what. But I know it was remarkable enough to attract my notice, even though his figure was foreshortened and shadowed, down in the deep trench, and mine was high above him, so steeped in the glow of an angry sunset, that I had shaded my eyes with my hand before I saw him at all. Hello, below! From looking down the line, he turned himself about again, and, raising his eyes, saw my figure high above him. Is there any path by which I can come down and speak to you? He looked up at me without replying, and I looked down at him without pressing him too soon with a repetition of my idle question. Just then there came a vague vibration in the earth and air, quickly changing into a violent pulsation, an oncoming rush that caused me to start back, as though it had force to draw me down. When such vapor as rose to my height from this rapid train had passed me and was skimming away over the landscape, I looked down again and saw him refurling the flag he had shown while the train went by. I repeated my inquiry. After a pause, during which he seemed to regard me with a fixed attention, he motioned with his rolled up flag towards a point on my level, some 200 or 300 yards distant. I called down to him, "All right," and made for that point. There, by dint of looking closely about me, I found a rough zigzag descending path notched out, which I followed. The cutting was extremely deep, and unusually precipitate. It was made through a clammy stone that became oozier and wetter as I went down. Oh my god, that destroyed me. Okay. That became oozier and wetter as I went down. For these reasons, I found the way along long enough to give me time to recall a singular air of reluctance or compulsion with which he had pointed out the path. When I came down low enough upon the zigzag descent to see him again, I saw that he was standing between the rails on the way by which the train had lately passed, in an attitude as if he were waiting for me to appear. He had his left hand at his chin, and his left elbow rested on his right hand, crossed over his breast. His attitude was one of such expectation and watchfulness that I had stopped a moment, wondering at it. I resumed my downward way, and stepping out upon the level of the railroad, and drawing nearer to him, saw that he was a dark, sallow man, with a dark beard and rather heavy eyebrows. His post was in as solitary and dismal a place as I ever saw. On either side, a dripping wet wall of jagged stone, excluding all view but a strip of sky, the perspective one way only a crooked prolongation of its great dungeon. The shorter perspective in the other direction terminating in a gloomy red light, and the gloomier entrance to a black tunnel, in whose massive architecture there was a barbarous, depressing, and forbidding air. So little sunlight ever found its way to this spot that it had an earthly, deadly smell, and so much cold wind rushed through it that it struck chill to me, as if I had left the natural world. Before he stirred, I was near enough to him to have touched him. Not even then, removing his eyes from mine, he stepped back one step and lifted his hand. This was a lonesome post to occupy, I said, and it had riveted my attention when I looked down from up yonder. A visitor was a rarity, I should suppose, but not an unwelcome rarity, I hoped. In me he merely saw a man who had been shut up with narrow limits all his life, and who, being last set free, had newly awakened interest in these great works. To such purpose I spoke to him, but I am far from sure of the terms I use, for, besides, I am not happy in opening any conversation. There was something in the man that daunted me. He directed a most curious look toward the red light near the tunnel's mouth, and looked all about it, as if something were missing from it, and then looked at me. That light was part of his charge, was it not? He answered in a low voice, "Don't you know it is?" The monstrous thought came into my mind as I perused the fixed eyes and the saturnine face. That was a spirit, not a man. I have speculated since whether there may have been an infection in his mind. In my turn, I stepped back, but in making action, I detected in his eyes some latent fear of me. This put the monstrous thought into flight. You look at me, I said, forcing a smile, as if you had a dread of me. I was doubtful, he returned, whether I had seen you before. Where? He pointed to the red light he looked at. There, I said. Intently watchful of me, he replied, but without sound. Yes. My good fellow, what should I do there? However, be that as it may, I never was there, you may swear. I think I may, he rejoined. Yes, I am sure I may. His manner cleared like my own. He replied to my remarks with readiness and in well-chosen words. Had he much to do there? Yes, that was to say, he had enough responsibility to bear, but exactness and watchfulness were what was required of him, and of actual work, manual labor, he had next to none. To change that signal, to trim those lights, to turn this iron handle now and then, was all he had to do under that head. Was it necessary for him when on duty to always remain in that channel of damp air? And could he never rise into the sunshine from between those high stone walls? Why, that depended upon time and circumstances. He took me into his box, where there was a fire, a desk for an official book in which he had to make certain entries, a telegraphic instrument with its dial, face, and needles, and the little bell of which he had spoken. On my trusting that he would excuse the remark that he had been well educated, and I hoped I might say without offence, perhaps educated above the station, he observed that instances of slight incongruity in such wise would rarely be found wanting among large bodies of men, and he heard it was so in the workhouses, in the police force, and even in that last desperate resource, the army, and that he knew it was so more or less in any great railway staff. He had been, when young, if I could believe it, sitting in that hut, he scarcely could, a student of natural philosophy. He had attended lectures, but he had run wild, misused his opportunities, gone down and never risen again. He had no complaint to offer about that. He had made his bed, and he lay upon it. It was far too late to make another. All that I have here condensed, he said, in a quiet manner, with his grave, dark regards divided between me and the fire. He threw in the word sir from time to time, and especially when he referred to his youth, as though to request me to understand that he claimed to be nothing but what I found him. He was several times interrupted by a little bell and had to read off messages and send replies. Once he had to stand without the door and display a flag as a train passed to make some verbal communication to the driver. In the discharge of his duties, I observed him to be remarkably exact and vigilant, breaking off his discourse at a syllable, and remaining silent until what he had to do was done. In a word, I should have set this man down as one of the safest men to be employed in that capacity, but for the circumstance that while he was speaking to me, he twice broke off with fallen color, turned his face toward the little bell when it did not ring, opened the door of the hut, which was to be kept shut to exclude the unhealthy damp, and looked out towards the red light near the mouth of the tunnel. On both of those occasions he came back to the fire with an inexplicable air upon him, which I had remarked, without being able to define when we were so far asunder. Said I, when I rose to leave him, you almost make me think that I have met with the contented man, and I am afraid I must acknowledge that I said it to lead him on. I believe I used to be so, he rejoined, in the low voice in which he had first spoken, but I am troubled, sir, I am troubled. He would have recalled the words if he could. He had said to them, however, and I took them quickly. With what? What is your trouble? It is very difficult to impart, sir. It's very, very difficult to speak of. If you ever make me another visit, I will try to tell you. But I expressly intend to make you another visit. Say, when shall it be? I go off early in the morning, and I shall be again at 10 to tomorrow night. I will come at 11. He thanked me and went out the door with me. I'll show you my white light, sir, he said in a peculiar low voice, till you have found the way up. When you have found it, don't call out, and when you're at the top, don't call out. His manner seemed to make the place strike cold into me, but I said no more. Very well. And when you come down tomorrow night, don't call out. Let me ask you a parting question. What made you cry, hello, below there, tonight? Heaven knows, said I. I cried something to that effect. Not to that effect, sir. Those were very words. I know them well. Admit those were the very words. I said them, no doubt, because I saw you below. For no other reason? What other reason could I possibly have? You had no feeling that they were conveyed to you in a supernatural way? No. He wished me good night and held up his light. I walked by the side down the line of the rails with a very disagreeable sensation of a train coming behind me until I found the path. It was easier to mount than to descend, and I got back to my inn without any adventure. Punctual to my appointment, I placed my foot on the first notch of the zigzag next night. The distant clocks were striking 11. He was waiting for me at the bottom with his white light on. I have not called out, I said, when we came closer together. May I speak now? By all means, sir. Good night, then, and here is my hand. Good night, sir, and here's mine. With that, we walked side by side into his box, entered it, closed the door, and sat down by the fire. I have made up my mind, sir, he began, bending forward as we were seated, and speaking in a tone but a little above a whisper, that you shall not have to ask me twice what troubles me. I took you for someone else yesterday evening. That troubles me. That mistake? No, that's someone else. Who is it? I don't know. Like me? I don't know. I never saw the face. The left arm is across the face, and the right arm is waved, violently waved, this way. I followed his action with my eyes, and it was the action of an arm gesticulating, with utmost passion and vehemence. For God's sake, clear the way. One moonlight night, said the man, I was sitting here, when I heard a voice cry, Hello, below there. I started up, looked from the door, and saw this someone else standing by the red light near the tunnel, waving as I just now showed you. The voice seemed hoarse with shouting, and it cried, Look out! Look out! And then it happened again. Hello, below there, look out! I caught up my lamp, turned it on red, and ran towards the figure, calling, What's wrong? What has happened? Where? It stood just outside the blackness of the tunnel. I advanced so close upon it that I was wondering at its keeping the sleeve across its eyes. I ran right up at it, and had my hand stretched out to pull the sleeve away, when it was gone. Into the tunnel? Said I. No, I ran into the tunnel 500 yards. I stopped and held my lamp above my head, and saw figures of measured distance. I saw the wet stains stealing down the walls and trickling through the arch. I ran out again faster than I had run in, for I had mortal abhorrence of the place upon me. And I looked round the red light with my own red light, and I went up the iron ladder to the gallery atop it, and I came down again and ran back here. I telegraphed both ways. An alarm has been given. Is anything wrong? The answer came back, both ways. All well. Resisting the slow touch of a frozen finger tracing out my spine, I showed him that this figure must be a deception of his sense of sight, and how that figures, originating in disease of the delicate nerves that minister to the functions of the eye, were known to have often troubled patients, some of whom had become conscious of the nature of their affliction, and had even proved it by experiments upon themselves. As to an imaginary cry, I said, Do but listen for a moment to the wind in its unnatural valley, while we speak so low, and the wild harp makes of the telegraph wires. That was all very well, he returned, after we had sat listening for a while, and he ought to know something of the wind and the wires. He so often passed long winter nights there, alone and watching. But he would beg to remark that he had not finished. I asked his pardon, and slowly added these words, touching my arm. Within 6 hours of the appearance, the memorable accident on this line happened, and within 10 hours the dead and wounded were brought along through the tunnel over the spot where the figure had stood. A disagreeable shudder crept over me, but I did my best against it. It was not to be denied, I rejoined, that this was a remarkable coincidence, calculated deeply to impress his mind, but it was unquestionable that remarkable coincidences did continually occur, and they must be taken into account in dealing with such a subject. Though to be sure I must admit, I added, for I thought I saw that he was going to bring the objection to bear upon me. Men of common sense did not allow much for coincidences in making the ordinary calculations of life. He again begged to remark that he had not finished. I again begged his pardon for betraying into his interruptions. This, he said, again laying his hand upon my arm and glancing over his shoulder with hollow eyes, was just a year ago. 6 or 7 months passed, and I had recovered from the surprise and the shock, when one morning, as the day was breaking, I, standing at the door, looked towards the red light and saw the spectre again. He stopped with a fixed look at me. Did it cry out? No, it was silent. Did it wave its arm? No, it leaned against the shaft of the light with both hands before the face, like this. Once more I followed his action with my eyes. It was an action of mourning. I have seen such an attitude in stone figures on tombs. Did you go up to it? I came in and sat down, partly to collect my thoughts, partly because it had turned me faint. When I went to the door again, daylight was above me, and the ghost was gone. But nothing followed, nothing came of this. He touched me on the arm with his forefinger twice or thrice, giving me a ghastly nod each time. That very day, as the train came out of the tunnel, I noticed, at a carriage window on my side, what looked like a confusion of hands and heads, and something waved. I saw it just in time to signal the driver, "Stop!" He shut off, put his brake on, but then the train drifted past here 150 yards or more. I ran after it, and as I went along, I heard terrible screams and cries. A beautiful young lady had died instantaneously in one of the compartments, and was brought in here, and laid down on this floor between us. Involuntarily, I pushed my chair back, as I looked from the boards at which he pointed himself. True, sir, true, precisely as it happened, so I tell it to you. I could think of nothing to say to any purpose, and my mouth was very dry. The wind in the wires took up the story with a long lamenting wail. He resumed, "Now, sir, mark this, and judge how my mind is troubled. The spectre came back a week ago. Ever since, it has been there, now and again, by fits and starts. At the light, at the danger light. What does it seem to do?" He repeated, if possible with increased passion and vehemence, that former gesticulation of, "For God's sake, clear the way." And he went on, "I have no peace or rest for it. It calls to me for many minutes together in agonized manner. 'Below there, look out, look out!' It stands waving to me. It rings my little bell." I caught at that. "Did it ring your bell yesterday evening when I was here and you went to the door?" "Twice." "Why, see," I said, "how your imagination misleads you. My eyes were on the bell, and my ears were open to the bell, and if I am a living man, it did not ring at those times, no, nor at any other time, except when it was rung by the natural course of physical things by the station communicating with you." He shook his head. "I have never made a mistake as that yet, sir. I have never confused the spectre's ring with the man's. The ghost's ring is a strange vibration in the bell that derives from nothing else, and I have not asserted that the bell stirs to the eye. I don't wonder that you failed to hear it, but I heard it." "And did the spectre seem to be there when you looked out?" "It was there, both times," he repeated firmly, "both times." "Will you come to the door with me and look for it now?" He bit his under lip, and as though he were somewhat unwilling, but arose. I opened the door and stood on the step while he stood in the doorway. There was the danger light. There was the dismal mouth of the tunnel. There was the high, wet stone walls of the cutting. There were the stars above them. "Do you see it?" I asked him, taking a particular note of his face. His eyes were prominent and strained, but not very much more so, perhaps, than my own had been when I had directed them earnestly toward the same spot. "No," he answered, "it is not there." "Agreed," said I. We went in again, shut the door, and resumed our seats. I was thinking about how to best improve this advantage, if it might be called one, when he took up the conversation in such a matter-of-course way. So, assuming that there could be no serious question of fact between us, I felt myself placed in the weakest of positions. "By this time you will fully understand, sir," he said. "What troubles me so dreadfully is this question: what does the spectre mean?" I was not sure, I told him, that I did fully understand. And I'll stop there.
What was that?
That is The Signal Man by Charles Dickens.
Oh, okay. I think we had a sort of miscommunication about what you meant by find a ghost story.
Well, okay.
Because you found like an actual, like a ghost story, like a fictional written ghost story, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
I found like like a real life like account of like a haunted place with a ghost story.
Well, that's good too. I mean, this
Yeah.
is the ghost episode. Anything
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah. That was
I
very
just
interesting. I feel kind of bad because I'm so bad at listening and it's that old English type stuff, so it was really
yeah.
hard for me to follow,
No, that's okay. Um,
but it was super
it
interesting. Whoops,
yeah.
sorry.
I mean, it's like, I mean, Charles Dickens is like one of the OG ghost story man,
Yeah.
because he had the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future. Um,
Oh.
but this was not that. It was slightly longer than I kind of thought it would be. I was like, oh, it's only like 2 pages, and then I was like, oh,
Oh, it was
um,
20 minutes.
yeah, okay, well, we can cut some of that, but
Oh, okay.
anyway, I like didn't even get to the end, um, but I think it was it gave the vibe of Ghost,
Yeah,
um,
definitely. The vibe of
there's
Ghost. Yes.
yeah, and that's what we wanted because you know what this is Liverpool, USA, best friend podcast because we're best friends,
Yeah.
and today is the Ghost episode, so you know we're talking about ghosts,
Yeah,
ghost
which is so
vibes.
funny that you bring that up because I recently started listening to shouting out another podcast here. But there's a podcast called Let's Get Haunted, which is two
Mm-hmm.
lovely ladies that tell it's not just ghost stories, they do like ghost stories, cryptids, conspiracy
Mm-hmm.
theories, aliens, like all that kind of stuff. Um so I thought it was kind of funny that you were like, "Oh, let's do ghosts." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, cool. I've been like listening to some ghost ladies and I'd love to talk about some ghosty stuff." So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. Ghosts. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I have a complicated relationship with ghosts.
Yeah.
Um, because last year we did a Halloween episode. We just like talked about Halloween, and we both love Halloween a lot. We like creepy stuff. We like the aesthetic of creepy stuff. um, but I will say I think both of us are pretty like we don't have a lot of guts with like
Yeah. Actual creepy stuff.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
think ghosts are an interesting one because I love creepy literature. Like I
Mhm.
love,
Mhm.
one of our founding friendship moments was us taking that gothic and horror literature class in England together. And
Oh
we
yeah.
read a bunch of stuff like what I just read. Um and so, I like all of that a lot, but I don't know how I feel about like actual ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah, I can start with my description of my belief or non-belief in ghosts, which is that
Yeah.
I would definitely describe myself as a skeptic.
Yeah.
Although at the same time, I understand that it's fun to like, tell ghost stories, and I also understand that there are indeed things um that we have not been able to explain that have happened to people. I do think that there's
Yeah.
because of my like skeptic nature, I do think that there's a lot of things that can be explained that people think are ghost happenings. But I also understand that there's things that can't be explained, and like I totally get that. But I also think one of the biggest reasons why I am a skeptic, as much as I am, is because I think that if I believed in ghosts, because I'm already so much of like a baby when it comes to like actual scary things,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
I'm very afraid of like everything. Um so if I believed in ghosts, I think I would like have to be institutionalized.
Yeah.
Because like I just simply could not handle that. Like I'm already afraid
Yeah.
enough like in the dark, like
Yeah.
alone in the dark situations, and like I already get like freaked out enough, like you know I can't watch scary movies, like
Yeah.
I can't do haunted houses. I absolutely cannot do anything remotely like that. So I think that's really the biggest reason why I don't believe in ghosts. I really don't, because I think that if I allow myself to, it would like just be a worse time for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say my general belief is that I don't believe in ghosts, but I I do think that there's a little bit of something. I mean, I don't know like what exactly, but I don't really think it's like capital G ghosts, but like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it makes sense, right? Because people like it makes sense that ghosts are something that the human mind has come up with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure.
Because I think it's very like human nature to see people that are alive and then they die and you're like, "Well, where does the alive part go?"
Mhm.
And it's like, "Well, it has to go somewhere. It can't just like disappear." And so that's where we get like heaven and like ghosts, you know?
Yeah, yeah, which I think is really interesting because I know I've heard stories about like, you know, older older time America um where like there are ghost stories where people have like not told their churches that they think they're haunted because the church is like not into ghosts, you know? Like they'll
Yeah,
think
well,
you're
because
crazy. So it's like there's differences, but there's also similarities because it's like the church, or at least some in old times, I don't know, is like anti-ghost belief, but they have
well,
like
yeah.
their own
I mean, I
supernatural
think
beliefs.
yeah, I think it's just you can't have ghosts and heaven and hell, I don't think,
Yeah, that makes
because it's like
sense.
if you're going to die and go somewhere, then you have to go to heaven or hell,
Yeah.
and ghost on earth is like not one of those options.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
like
Yeah, yeah.
kind of negates. So yeah, I mean, I think that it makes sense, but I mean, really, I think we're all saying the same thing, right?
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
ghosts, heaven, afterlife, spirits, it all kind of is the same idea. And I think it just comes from humans being afraid of death and like what's going to happen to my alive part when I die,
Oh
you
yeah,
know
for sure.
and what
Yeah.
what happened to my mom and what happened to like this person and whatever, right? It's like, where did the alive part go? And so we have to like have somewhere to put that, and that's where ghosts come from. That's where a lot of like religious stuff comes from, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And also I feel like a lot of it comes from not being able to explain something, so you want an explanation for that thing.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, humans always come up with some explanation for uncomfortable truths. It's like, people die, and it's like, okay, I don't like that is uncomfortable, so we need to explain that in a way that makes it not uncomfortable, which is that they just like go to heaven, or they just are
Mhm.
a ghost now in the attic, or like whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really interesting how the concept of a ghost has like stayed the same but changed over time. Because we have like ghosts. We have like poltergeists, which is like a different version of ghost, like different
Yeah.
versions of hauntings and how we like believe that ghosts appear and how they make themselves known, and we have like technology now that we've invented through science as
Hmm.
ways that we say can pick up ghosts. They have
Yeah.
the ovilus thing that they use and like little ghost box things to like try to hear ghosts, and it's really interesting the ways that we've like scientified like ghost hunting and
Yeah.
trying to prove ghosts and stuff like with science, which is just kind of like a, I don't know, is that like a juxtaposition thing? Like, is that like ghosts and science together? It's like, oh, that's you know like the opposite, you'd think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because humans are so desperate to like have ghosts be a thing,
Yeah.
and to have some kind of answer that we can actually prove, that yeah, we're trying to like adapt our science. We're trying to like we're holding out hope. I think that's really interesting. I mean, it's certainly gotten like less so, um probably because I think more and more people are more skeptic of it, because we do have a lot more science and knowledge and everything, and the idea of there being some like ghost spirit thing going on is like a little bit, it's it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, yeah. Have you or do you know anyone that has had like an unexplained experience that maybe could be attributed to ghostly
I
happenings?
personally personally I have never encountered any ghost stuff in real life. I know that my dad has seen a ghost, he says.
Mm.
And I think that he's serious, but I never know.
Uh-huh.
I'll never know with that man.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember he told me that it was when he was a kid, which I don't know how much I trust his like perception as a kid as well. But
Mhm.
anyways, he was a kid and he was in England, which is a very haunted
Oh,
location.
yes. Yeah.
So, um, he was in England and he was at some like super old place, you know, some like old family inn or something,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is
There's
just
a lot
like,
of those in England. Super old
yeah,
places.
yeah. And so he said that like the old owner of the inn or something, like people, well, he didn't know, I guess, but then he like saw this like man, and then he like said something about it to like his parents or like the you know staff at the inn now or whatever, and they were like, oh yeah, that's like a ghost, and he
Oh,
was like,
huh.
what? um so yeah, I definitely know that he's seen a ghost, or he claims to, and I know a lot of people have, and it's like the Loch Ness monster, where it's like, I don't know, it's like, do I believe you? Like, I probably believe that like something weird happened and you don't know what the explanation is, but I don't
Mhm.
think that it's like a ghost or like a monster or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have not had any personal experiences with the possibility of ghosts. I tried to ask my dad because I feel like he has something, but he never got back to me.
Oh my god.
But so like stay tuned on any possible dad ghost stories because I feel like he has to have some.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
Nicole said that because the Pacific University campus is like definitely like very haunted.
Oh,
Just
absolutely. There's like certain locations on that campus that
yeah.
are so cursed.
Yeah, I actually read about when I was trying to find like a local ghost story. I read about
Oh,
Night
nice.
Hall, which is like the admissions building.
Yes.
Used to be a music building, and there's like a ghost that supposedly haunts that people have believed in since like the 1940s or something like that. And she has a
Interesting.
name, I don't remember. Yeah, and in like was it the 60s or the 80s?
Mhm.
It was like years ago. There were kids that like did a séance in the like attic, and so like that building has some history. But
Okay.
Nicole used to work like work study in the career development center on the Pacific
Mhm.
University campus, and multiple people that worked there and like were involved with that building believe that it was haunted. And she did
Mm.
say that she had an experience, and she doesn't like necessarily think it was a ghost or anything, but it's just kind of like a weird unexplained happening that she experienced, which was, I think it was her and like one other guy that worked there were in the building, and I don't remember, I think she was like there was like the staircase, and I think she was like at the bottom of the stairs, but like and like her and the guy were both like on like the ground floor, and she
Mhm.
heard like what sounded like footsteps in the attic, and I think
Oh
he heard
no.
it too, and there was no one else in that building. And so it's just really interesting because it's like stuff like that is what blurs the line between like, oh yeah, there's like the sound of an animal in the attic, or it's just like a bird, or it's just like the wind. When it's something that sounds like something else, like a sound that like sounds like
Yeah.
footsteps, that's a little bit like, okay, can't explain that one, that's weird, you know. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's like a more like the most personal, I think, that I know of. I could have other friends that have had ghost stories, I don't know, but like, yeah, that's like the most personal for me. I totally believe in, speaking of like, being a child and seeing things or whatever.
Mhm.
I totally believe in the power of people's own brains to trick themselves,
Yes.
with like
Yeah.
hallucinations and even hearing sounds. And I mean, we have people who have, like diagnosable mental illnesses that very commonly just have like naturally occurring hallucinations. And so it's like stuff like that could happen with people's brains that don't have, like diagnosable mental illnesses or anything, but like you can hear and see things that aren't there without having to be on
Totally.
drugs or whatever. And like
Oh,
that I
totally.
think is like, could definitely be a lot of people's ghost experiences. Like if you go into a place and you think that it's haunted, you're already like setting yourself up for possibly,
Yeah.
convincing yourself that you've had an experience. But, and I also totally, because like when I was young, and I'm just going to tell this because to me, this is the closest thing I have to like a haunted story.
Yeah.
But when I was really, I think I've told you about
Mhm.
this before, how when I was super young, I used to have like nightmares all the time. And this was like super, super young, like it's like single digit age, very young,
Mhm.
like before school.
Mhm.
Um, and I used to like see things, and I remember a few specific things, but it would be when it was super, super dark, not like pitch black in the room, but like just enough light to barely see outlines of something, so it has to be like really, really
Mhm.
dark.
Yeah.
And it was always in the time when I was like waking up, like not fully awake yet, or like as soon as I had opened my
Mhm.
eyes from being asleep. um and so this is why I fully believe in like the possibility of people hallucinating things, because I remember a few very distinct things that I saw. And
Oh
I
my
remember
god.
seeing like walking out of my, because I used to like walk down the hallway like to my mom's room to like tell her that I had a nightmare all the time, and then she'd be like, "It's okay, go back to sleep," and I'd feel better and go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember like opening my bedroom door and there were coats hanging on the back of the door that's like right across the hall from my bedroom, and I remember just like seeing those moving.
Mm.
And like I remember that specifically. I remember seeing when I went into mom's room and like turned the corner around her door, like a raccoon on the floor that like hissed at me. Like I remember like it was like
What?
there was a raccoon, like just like a shadowy like raccoon figure.
Oh my
And I
god.
remember that so distinctly, but it didn't make sound. It's like it hissed at me, but it didn't make sound. But the most
Mm.
significant thing with these that I learned when I was a child is that if I just like blinked, like if I closed my eyes and opened them again, it'd be gone. And so I was like, well, I know it's not real because I closed, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I think the weirdest ones were at my dad's house. Well, the raccoon one was one of the weirdest ones. But I remember at my dad's house, I had like the top bunk, and there was I remember a night where I like looked over the bunk, and it was like his, because he's always had Pomeranians, but like the one at the time, I think it was Max. It was like I saw like the dog run from like the doorway like into the room, but then like disappear before it hit the wall,
Oh my god.
which is weird. And then one, I think the creepiest one, which I didn't realize how creepy this was until I told Justin it in detail recently, and I didn't fully realize how weird it was, because he knew that when I was a kid I would like see these hallucinations, which I think is just like the
Yeah.
best word for it. I think that's just what they are.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like dreaming, like I was awake, but that weird
Yeah.
kind of like, I think one of the reasons why it happened is because I was still in that like kind of sleep state.
Yeah, totally.
So like shadows were just like being manipulated by my brain or whatever. But I think
Yeah.
the creepiest one that I can remember is me like looking over the side of the bunk bed towards the floor and seeing my sister like crouched on the floor, and it was like she was looking underneath like a desk, and then her head was like looking around kind of, but it was moving
Mhm.
like wrong, like not how like your head moves. It was like frame
Oh,
by frame type of
weird.
thing.
That's
And
very
just
creepy.
I know, and like just for like a second though, it probably didn't even last that long, and then I blinked and it went away. But that one is probably like the creepiest one that I can remember, because I don't
That's
remember if she
extremely
like
creepy.
looked at me, which like
Oh
now
my
would
god.
like send me into shock.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember that, and I'm like, oh my god, how did I deal with that as a child? I it doesn't happen to me anymore. As I got older, like I think the most recent time that something like that has happened is there has been a couple times as I've gotten older where I've woken up just after sleeping and it's still pretty dark in the room. But and sometimes they'll be like, but it's more like the weird little squigglies that you see in your eyes sometimes.
Oh, uh-huh.
Like more something like that, or just like a blurry like
Yeah.
ball of like lines or whatever that would just like be there for a second and then like go away.
Mm.
That's just like some weird trick of the eye is the like
Yeah.
most recent weird thing that's like that has happened to me, but nothing like seeing actual human
Yeah.
forms or animal forms or anything like that. But that, just me having that experience lends to me being a skeptic, I think, because I'm like, if my child brain could do that, like, yeah,
Oh,
people can
totally.
like see full things that like aren't really there.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely
Or I'm just haunted, you know. What?
I mean, I definitely have had like similar things, not quite as like intense or creepy as yours, but like I've definitely like thought that there were spiders in my bed and then there's like not, but I just
Mm.
like I wake up and I'm kind of like asleep and then all of a sudden I like jerk and like freak out because I'm like, "Oh my god, there's like a spider like crawling or something." But there's like not.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um and that's just like and like I think I see it, but I don't.
Yeah.
Um and then the other thing that happens to me, and this is like absolutely just like a trick of the eye type of thing, because I when I wake up in the morning, or like right before I go to bed, when it's dark and stuff, like I don't have my glasses on because I'm like
Mm.
going to bed, so I
Mhm.
like can't see. And
Yeah.
so like something will move or something, and it's like something completely normal, but it's looks really like weird to me because it's all distorted.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that, or when I this happens to me so often when I get in the shower, because I also like don't wear my glasses when I get in the shower,
Oh,
obviously,
yeah.
and then it's also like water, so yeah, if like anything moves in the shower weird, I'm like, oh my god,
Oh
like
my god. Well,
something's
and
happening.
and your brain's like more on high alert too, because you're like vulnerable, like you're naked and wet and you don't have your
Yeah.
glasses on, and
Oh my god,
yeah.
I this is like kind of silly, but I so I got in the shower and I didn't have my glasses on, and I'm like, and I think it was like either really late or really early or something, so I was like
Mm.
very tired also, so
Mhm.
like it just didn't help. But I had it must have been really late because I had like just taken my socks off like right before I got in the shower,
Mhm.
and they were like kind of like fuzzy socks, like not actually like fuzzy socks, but like
Mm.
they had like a lot of like I don't know,
Yeah.
particles, I suppose.
Okay, yeah.
And so like they had and they were black, so they had gotten like black fuzz basically on my feet. And I just like
Mm.
got in the shower, and then all of the black fuzz like came off of my feet,
Oh
but
no.
I like didn't realize that that's what it was like at all. And so I just like looked down, and there's like all this like black like little stuff in the
Oh
like by my feet,
no.
and I was like, oh my god.
That's
I
so
like
I didn't
thought it was
realize
bugs or whatever.
how like frightening things can be when you can't see. When
Yeah,
you're,
I was
because
like,
I wear
what is
glasses,
that?
but my eyesight is not that bad without
Yeah.
glasses. So I, aw, that's where ghost stories come from. Is people didn't have glasses in the like 18th century.
Right? Yeah, you didn't know what you were seeing.
Oh my god, that's so
Yeah.
funny, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I just know there's gonna like be bugs in my shower at some point, and I'm gonna be like, oh, I must have been wearing like bad socks or something.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Um, if you were to die and become a ghost, if you like somehow became a ghost, what would you do with your ghost powers?
Um, if I'm thinking about like the way that we think that ghosts can like interact with the real world,
Yeah.
I feel like I would. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I wonder. It would be. I feel like I would lean in the direction of doing things that are like kind of sweet and helpful to like people in my family. Like because we have
Yeah.
this such a thing about like some of our ghost stories revolve around like past um lovers and family members and stuff, like seeing things that you believe are like signs from them being there, or
Yeah.
like ways that people believe that they've been like helped by like a guardian angel or whatever, like a ghost of like a family
Yeah.
member.
Hmm.
And I feel like I would want to do like stuff like that,
Yeah.
yeah. Or like if like one of someone that I like loved that's alive and I'm like dead like loses their keys, and I'll just like put their keys like on the coffee table or whatever so that they can like find
Yeah.
them. Like things like that.
Yeah, that's very like pure ghost energy.
I
I
feel
love
like, yeah, I feel like I would want to do that. I don't think I would want to waste, like, I don't know, if I was a ghost, like, the concept is that you're, like, trapped when you're a ghost.
it. Yeah.
So if I was a ghost forever, I feel like eventually I'd want to, like, screw with people that, like, I don't like and, like, screw with evil people, you know? But
Yeah.
if I was a ghost for, like, a limited time, I'm like, I don't want to waste my time, like, being, like, evil. I want to, like,
Yeah.
be nice, yeah.
I love that. I feel like I would do a little bit of like a Phantom of the Opera moment and like find a good music venue and like haunt their attic,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and be like,
honestly.
if you invite bands that do not please me, like I'll break something, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that idea. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
but
go
yeah,
haunt somewhere that definitely is haunted, like a music venue or like,
yes,
some old like Victorian building or something.
yeah, good excuse to just like live in a castle, you know? Like
Exactly.
I'm a ghost now. Like I don't gotta pay rent.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's so
Yeah,
funny. I love that idea.
yeah, good. I feel like sitcom idea is like a ghost sitcom, but it's like ghosts not haunting people, just like being a ghost, you know?
That exists.
Oh, what
There's a
is it?
it's more recent. I remember seeing like within the last like year or two. It's new and it's this family that like moves into a house and the like wife or whatever I think can see the ghost, but they're just like normal people and it's like funny. Like it's supposed to be like a funny show. And
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm into it. I'll check it out.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called or anything, but I'm sure you can find it cuz it is pretty unique. There's nothing else like that out there. I'm kind of
Yeah,
surprised that it took this long.
yeah. I really do like the concept of ghosts. Like I like the like of a nice ghost, of like
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's just like a ghost, you
Yeah,
know?
because they really have limited capabilities. If you think of like the standard
Yeah.
ghost, it's like,
Like they can't actually like hurt you or kill you. They just like
yeah,
spook you.
yeah, or like just look cool. Like you just see them for a second, or they like move stuff around, or like cause like weird smells, and it's just kind of like
Yeah.
the standard ghost that's not really harmful or anything is just kind of fun. Like I get that, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, and you get to like make people talk about you.
yeah, exactly.
Like everyone's like,
Become celebrity.
yeah, like, did you move that chair? No, it
Yeah.
must have been the ghost. Like, thank you.
Yeah. I wonder what like our names would be if we were ghosts because they call people
Yeah.
like nicknames, ghost nicknames, you know.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What would your ghost nickname
Oh
be?
my god, I don't know, because I would want to haunt like, well, is a difference if I was haunting like the local cool music venue building or if I
Yeah.
was haunting like the house of my like husband or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. If I was just like haunting Abe after I died, like, I think he would just still call me Allie. But
Yeah, yeah, because it's like you would know. It's like, no, this ghost doesn't have a nickname because I know who it is. Like, this is simply my
yeah.
wife.
Yeah. Yeah. But
But
like,
like the music
yeah.
venue, yeah,
I feel like, yeah, it could be, like the pop punk ghost
yeah,
because I just like am always requesting pop punk
yeah,
and
yeah.
like I break stuff
You're
if they like do too much
you're
pop.
most positively active when there's like a pop punk band in the building.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
punk ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if
I
I
love that.
haunted like because the Crystal Ballroom's like definitely already haunted,
Oh yeah.
but it'd be
Do you think
cool to
you'd
be
like get
called
to
like,
hang out with the other ghosts in there?
oh yeah, probably. It'd be cool to be like, a ballroom ghost or like
Yes.
or maybe I don't know, what would be like my signature move?
Ooh, just like messing with like the chandelier.
Yeah, yeah, like the chandelier ghost. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, I would love to hear the ghost story you chose.
Yeah, so I went a different direction. And speaking of like the other podcast ladies, I kind of went in like what they do, which is they kind of like tell a history and story revolving around like a specific place.
Ooh, okay.
Um and so I chose cuz I could not think of anything.
Hmm.
So I ended up going with um the McMenamins Grand Lodge Hotel in Forest Grove,
Okay.
because
Mhm.
all of the McMenamins buildings are definitely like super haunted. They have like they're all buildings that like used to be something else, you know?
Mhm.
So they're like super, a lot of history there, like a lot of weird stuff happening there.
Mhm.
So I'm like, yeah, I'll tell. The most personal one to me is the Grand Lodge, because we like lived in Forest Grove.
Yeah.
We went to Pacific. And I think it's a super cool building. And so it used to be, it was built in the 20s, and it was originally like a Masonic lodge for like retired elderly Masons and their families. And I'll give like a little bit of background in the 20s of what was happening in Oregon. So just so you can get
Mhm.
a concept of like what the time was like. So like in the 20s in Oregon, we had like the roaring 20s, but in Oregon it was like not as roaring, I guess. Like our economy wasn't doing as great compared to the rest of the country. But
Mhm.
we did start to develop more roads. We did like the Columbia River Highway, the Pacific Highway, and the Oregon Coast Highway, so that was happening in the 20s. There was the whole women becoming more empowered with their right to vote, and their dancing and their jazz music. They're smoking cigarettes, they're cutting their hair, they're demanding equitable divorces and access to birth control.
Mhm.
So like definitely more like, women ghosts probably in the 20s that are like,
Yeah.
you know, powerful or whatever.
Yeah.
We've got like more sports stars, more radio stations, cars started becoming more popular and common. Um, but we had like prohibition, more organized crime, social Darwinism principles were becoming super big. So, in Oregon, like, really unfortunately embraced the eugenics thing. We were sterilizing criminals in Oregon. Uh, we had like the rise of the KKK in Oregon happen in the 20s, and they were like infiltrating the government and creating some laws that like stuck around for way too long and maybe even are still around. So, like, that happened in the
Hate that.
20s. Yeah.
Yep.
And then, of course, we like ended with the Great Depression. So that's like what's happening in the 20s in Oregon when this building was built. Very haunted stuff already.
Yes.
So that's where this building came from. It started as like the Masonic Lodge, and they built like a separate like cottage for children, and it was operated as an orphanage as well for a really short time. But apparently the children and the elderly folks did not get along, so it did not operate as an orphanage for very long. I could not find, as much as I could search, any like weird stories that could be like ghost stories or like weird happenings or anything when this place operated as a Masonic lodge, because I know weird stuff happened because there was old people and children, which are like,
Mhm.
you know, like where all the ghost stories come from. But anyway, so that's what was happening there. The lodge itself was really damaged in 1962 by a Columbus Day storm, and then it's kind of started like going downhill from there. And then it became McMenamins bought it in like 1999, I think, and it opened as the current Grand Lodge that it is in 2000. So now it's like got a lot of hotel rooms, a spa, a theater, a pool. It's got live music, a restaurant, bars, and all this like expansive, beautiful green grounds and
Mhm.
everything. Um, so when it was a Masonic lodge, I know that like there was ghostly stuff that was happening, but most of the ghost stories now revolving around the lodge are like from current day when it was a McMenamins.
Mhm.
But so many weird little ghosty things happen in the lodge that they have a log book at their front desk because so many people report things and so many people go up and ask about it, that they literally have a book that you can like write your experiences in because they have so many people reporting unexplained things. Um which I thought was really interesting, and I did not know
Mhm.
that. A lot of the things that happen are just like common ghosty things, like things moving, faucets running, like all by themselves, weird smells, like typical ghosty things. There was a story from 2001 that I found of there was a woman who worked there who saw uh she described an old man wearing a gray-green cardigan and a brown hat watching her at the bottom of a set of stairs. And she said she could see through him, and she stared at him for like 30 seconds, and he just stood there, and she glanced away, and he was gone when she looked back. And she couldn't find him again. She looked all around, she couldn't find him. And then later, like days or weeks, I don't know how long later, she saw a photo on the second floor of the lodge of a man who looked like the guy that she saw, and I guess he was he labeled Old Joe, and had been a resident of the Masonic nursing home, and apparently was known for hiding beneath staircases and around corners so that he could watch people.
Oh, creepy.
Yeah, so that's interesting. But the most popular ghost to haunt the Grand Lodge is the Lavender Lady,
Mm.
who I don't know. You've like been in there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you seen they have her like painted on the wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So she's like basically a celebrity there. But apparently she could be the spirit of a woman who was named Anna, who died just before she turned 100 and lived in the lodge for many years. And apparently she used to give books to former lodge residents, and if a book was given to you, it was to fill a specific need, and you should read it if
Mm.
she gave you a book. And they call her the Lavender Woman because when she shows up, or just like periodically, there's the smell of lavender for a little bit, which is just like a very nice ghost thing,
Yeah, if
like
I wanna do
it's
that.
like the
If that's a
opposite of
ghost.
evil is just like giving people books and leaving the smell of lavender.
Yeah,
um
ghost goals, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. And as a ghost, she's been around since at least 1999 when McMenamin's construction began, and crews reported smelling sudden bursts of lavender during construction, or like all around the
Mm.
building. There was a
Mhm.
worker named Tony Blocker that said he saw a white-haired Dutch-looking woman smiling and moving across the hall from room 211 to the bathroom, and noticed a smell of lavender after she was gone. So she's just like this old friendly happy lady that like leaves books everywhere,
Love
and
that.
smells like lavender. And I
Oh.
guess when the front entrance area of the building was being renovated some time ago, they found a list of 22 books. And so the newer attic rooms that they recently like renovated and turned into hotel rooms, which Justin and I stayed in like a couple years ago at this point, or like a year ago. Apparently those were named after these 22 books on this piece of paper that was found, and apparently the piece of paper also smelled like lavender.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was just like a cute little ghost story that I found. I don't know of anyone, like personally, I don't think, that has claimed to have encountered this lavender lady. I have not smelled lavender, I don't think, being in that building, but I thought that that was like a really sweet ghost story, and like doesn't make me like afraid to like stay in the hotel. Because I was reading
No.
some of the McMenamin's ghost stories, and I'm like, I don't want to go here now. Like, this is scary. But it's like,
Yeah.
oh, but if the lavender lady is there, like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, that building's definitely cool and like haunted with its like hidden rooms and like
Yeah.
creepy, cool art and like everything. They just like curated a haunted experience, but like in a fun way.
In like a good way, yeah. Like, cause like it's not like a haunted house.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I do. I like that building. I haven't been to Forest Grove literally since the day that the pandemic started, and I just like had to
Oh my
leave.
god,
I just like
wow, you
have not even
haven't?
been back.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I've been back fairly recently. It was like the first day of band because I went with
No.
Justin because he's playing in the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
They had these like red rocking chairs outside everywhere, which I guess is like a new
Oh,
feature since the pandemic.
that's cute.
Yeah, that was pretty much the only obvious difference. But
Yeah, I need
like,
to
yeah,
go back.
campus still looks the same. Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm like, wow, okay, I'm glad that I chose this as my college. It really is a beautiful campus. I love that
It
place.
is. I love
Yeah.
Pacific. Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to take Abe there. He's never been there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was my little ghost story.
I loved
The
that.
lavender lady. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. This has been a good little episode about ghosts.
Yeah.
And we're back. In case anybody missed us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, good. Until our next episode, less haunted next time. Um, I love you.
I love you too.
Well, bye.
Bye.